There was a time when freedom had a different shape. It wasn't measured in gigabytes or status updates, but in miles per gallon and the gentle sway of aluminum dreams rolling down endless ribbons of asphalt. A time when the horizon wasn't a screen, but an endless promise painted in desert sunsets and mountain silhouettes. The story begins in the aftermath of World War II, when a nation hungry for peace found its appetite for adventure. The 1950s brought us the Airstream Safari, that silver bullet of wanderlust, its polished curves reflecting not just sunlight, but the aspirations of a generation learning to live again after the weight of war. Wally Byam didn't just build trailers, he built vessels for the human spirit, each rivet a promise that home could be anywhere you parked it. Picture the factory floors where these dreams took shape, workers in rolled up sleeves and fedoras, crafting aluminum shells with the precision of aircraft builders, because that's what they were, dreams made airworthy, ready to soar down highways instead of through clouds. The craftsmanship was poetry in metal, each curve calculated not just for aerodynamics, but for the aerodynamics of hope itself. In those days, vacation meant something different. It wasn't a week stolen from real life. It was real life, concentrated and purified. It meant packing everything that mattered into a space no larger than a studio apartment. Yet somehow, it held infinite possibility. The Winnebago Brave of the 70s became the chariot of choice for families discovering that America wasn't just a country, it was a feeling, stretched out across purple mountains and amber waves of grain. The preparation was a ritual in itself. Maps spread across kitchen tables like battle plans for joy, with routes traced in red ink and circles drawn around places with names that sang of adventure: Monument Valley, Yellowstone, the redwood forests. Mothers packed everything twice. Fathers checked tire pressure with the solemnity of pilots doing pre-flight inspections. Children pressed their faces against windows, counting the hours until departure like prisoners, marking days on cell walls. These weren't just vehicles, they were time machines, carrying us away from the tick of office clocks toward the rhythm of cricket songs and crackling campfires. The harvest gold interiors and wood grain paneling weren't design choices. They were promises of comfort in the wilderness, familiar warmth beneath unfamiliar stars. Each vintage RV was a small miracle of engineering and imagination, a proof that luxury wasn't about having more space. It was about making every inch count. The 1960s brought the birth of an entire culture. Suddenly, America's highways were populated by rolling neighborhoods, silver streams of Airstreams, colorful caravans of Shasta trailers, and the growing presence of self-contained motorhomes that promised even greater independence. Gas was cheap, the economy was booming, and the interstate highway system was unfurling across the continent like a red carpet for middle-class dreams. This was the era of the Volkswagen bus, that hippie chariot that carried a generation toward enlightenment, one broken down mile at a time. While not technically an RV, it shared the same DNA of freedom, the belief that the journey could be more important than the destination. That slowness was a virtue in a world increasingly obsessed with speed. Remember the rituals, the careful choreography of setting up camp, each family member knowing their role in the dance of deployment. Father wrestling with awnings that seemed designed by engineers who'd never actually used them. Mother transforming a space, smaller than most bathrooms, into a command center for family life. The satisfying thunk of stabilizer jacks finding solid ground, the gentle hiss of the propane lighting for the first time in a new place. These sounds became the soundtrack of freedom. Children would tumble out of sliding doors like puppies, their laughter echoing off canyon walls or lake shores, while parents unfolded lawn chairs and exhaled the weight of another work week. In those moments, as the dust settled and the horizon stretched endlessly in all directions, families remembered what they'd almost forgotten in their subdivision lives, that they actually liked each other. The Shasta Compact, with its cheerful cherry red and white exterior, promised adventures sized just right for young families. Its canned ham silhouette became as iconic as any classic car, a symbol of when luxury meant having running water and a place to sleep that wasn't a tent. These weren't status symbols, they were possibility symbols, proof that ordinary people could afford extraordinary experiences. The 1970s brought the true golden age of RV culture. Gas lines and economic uncertainty paradoxically made people value their escape vehicles even more. The Winnebago Indian, the Dodge Travco, the GMC motorhome, these weren't just transportation. They were declarations of independence from a world that seemed increasingly complicated. Their boxy, utilitarian beauty spoke to a generation that still believed in the possibility of simplicity. Inside these rolling homes, families learned to live differently. Space was precious, so every argument had to be shorter, every meal more carefully planned, every moment of solitude more treasured. Children learned to read maps, to pump water, to understand that comfort was something you created, not something you bought. Parents rediscovered each other without the distractions of suburban life. No lawn to mow, no neighbors to impress, just the endless conversation of the road. The roadside culture that grew around these travelers was its own universe. KOA campgrounds became temporary cities where strangers became neighbors for a night, sharing tips about the best routes over coffee that tasted better because it was made in a space the size of a closet. There were unwritten rules. Always help someone with a flat tire. Never park too close to the bathhouse. And if someone was flying a flag from their state, you stopped to say hello if you were from there too. As the decades rolled by, these rolling homes grew larger, more sophisticated. The Class A motorhomes of the 80s stretched longer, reached higher, carried more. The Holiday Rambler, the Fleetwood Pace Arrow, the Newmar Dutch Star. Each manufacturer promised to make the road feel more like home, until eventually they succeeded too well, and something ineffable was lost in translation. The early models had personalities, quirks that owners learned to love. The way a certain model's door would stick in humidity, how another's awning had to be coaxed into position with just the right combination of patience and profanity. These weren't bugs, they were features, proof that you were partnering with something that had its own character, its own way of moving through the world. But perhaps that beautiful simplicity of the early days when adventure required nothing more than a full tank, a paper map, and the courage to follow roads that led to places you'd never been, was always the true magic. The vintage RV represented something profound about American optimism. The belief that happiness wasn't a destination, but a way of traveling. In those aluminum cocoons, families discovered things about themselves they'd never known. That dad actually knew how to fix things when there was no choice. that Mom could navigate by dead reckoning when the maps ran out, that teenagers who claimed to hate family time would eventually emerge from their sullen cocoons to help set up camp, even smile when they thought no one was looking. The stories these vehicles could tell. First kisses stolen behind Airstream trailers at sunset. Children learning to drive in empty campground loops. Grandparents sharing one last adventure before age made the journey too difficult. Every vintage RV was a repository of moments that mattered, conversations that happened nowhere else, silences that were comfortable instead of awkward. There was a democracy to RV life that transcended the usual social barriers. In campgrounds, the retired teacher from Ohio would share a campfire with the construction worker from Texas, united by their mutual appreciation for the absurd challenge of backing a 30-foot trailer into a space designed by someone who'd clearly never tried to back a 30-foot trailer into anything. Wealth wasn't measured by square footage, but by the quality of your camp stories and the reliability of your generator. The vintage RV owners developed their own folklore, passed down through camping clubs and roadside encounters, tales of the perfect boondocking spot in Utah where you could camp for free and watch shooting stars, warnings about the bridge in Maine that was 2 inches lower than advertised, recipes for making decent coffee in a space so small you had to step outside to change your mind. There's a melancholy in vintage RV lots now, where these aluminum time capsules sit waiting for someone to understand their language again. Their curves hold the echoes of a million "Are we there yet?" S, and just as many answered prayers of "Not yet, not yet." Some have found a new life with restoration enthusiasts who understand that they're not just saving vehicles, they're preserving a way of being in the world that once seemed as permanent as the highways themselves. These weren't just machines. They were dreams made manifest, proof that home isn't a place. It's a feeling you carry with you. In an age when we travel at the speed of light through fiber optic cables, when our adventures are curated by algorithms and our destinations determined by reviews from strangers, perhaps we've forgotten the profound luxury of moving slowly enough to notice the world changing outside our windows. The vintage RVs knew something we're still learning, that the best journeys aren't about reaching the destination quickly, but about carrying the people you love slowly through a world that's too beautiful to rush past. They taught us that freedom isn't about having everything, it's about having just enough, and the open road stretching endlessly ahead. In their aluminum embrace, generations learned that happiness could fit in a space smaller than most walk-in closets, and that memories were the only cargo that really mattered. They proved that luxury wasn't thread count or square footage. It was time, unstructured and unhurried, spent with the people who knew your stories and loved you anyway. The road is still there, patient as ever. The interstates still unfurl across the continent like invitations to elsewhere. The campgrounds still welcome weary travelers, and the sunset still sets the sky on fire every evening, regardless of whether anyone is there to watch. The question isn't whether these dreams will return, it's whether we'll remember how to follow them. Perhaps that's the true legacy of these vintage vessels. Not the places they took us, but the people they revealed us to be when all the distractions were stripped away and we had nothing left but each other and the endless, beautiful road ahead.